Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Tosh Customs and I am so absolutely excited to be back to bring you another review again. It has been probably over a month at this point since I have had a real custom to show you guys, something to really talk about, and that's because as I've mentioned in several videos now, I've been in the middle of a move. I graduated college, started a new job, um, moving into a new apartment, a lot of changes, and with that means my entire custom setup had to be taken down, and I've been trying to get it set back up again. And so part of that was my video review setup. And with moving, with a new season of life comes upgrades. And you might be noticing that the background looks a little bit different here, and that's because I finally have a proper review setup. I have a real light box. If you didn't know before, I know I've talked about it a couple times, but essentially, my old review light box was a bunch of poster boards. So I had they were all taped together. So I had one poster board in the back, and it was taped to a poster board that was across the bottom, and then two more on the sides had like thick sticks, like thick toothpick rods on the sides to keep the walls straight. And I filmed out of my bedroom, and I just, it was just my light from the ceiling that lit it. And so I always dealt with issues about showing true color and things like that. And so I was like, hey, I'm moving. I'm kind of spending money anyways. I might as well get a light box. And so I have a light box now. Let me show it to you guys real quick. It's really cool. It's actually really, really large. But we have a light bar down there, a light bar up top right there. You can see my kitchen light. And then I'm using my phone camera light as well to give a little bit more direct on forward facing lighting. So I'm really excited with this setup. I really like it. Honestly, this box is a little bit larger than I had anticipated, but if I ever want to review 1/6 scale figures, because I am slowly opening up to a 1/6 scale collection, I'll be able to review those too, and that might be fun in the future. But anyways, for right now, what do we have before us? We have what I'm calling Ishmael, the enlightened mind, or the Omen. I'm kind of fiddling around with the name. I'm not sure yet. We'll find out when I post the video, when I put it on Instagram. Maybe we'll decide then. But some background to why I made this and why now, and this is so different from the normal comic, mezco, cyberpunk stuff that I normally do. So how in the world did I end up here with this monstrosity? Well, a couple months back, I was DM'd by another customizer, and honestly, I forget who sent me the original DM. I apologize, but basically saying, hey, we are doing a Halloween custom challenge. Would you like to join us? There's like 10 of us. And I said, sure, that's awesome. I know I normally don't do challenges or, custom collaboration type stuff, but I realized that like, hey, I'm going to be moving. I need content, and I need something that's a little bit easier to complete than a commission, because commissions just take a lot more time and focus. And so I said, okay, I'll do this. I'll sort of put together this creepy Halloween guy and we'll be good to go. And this guy has evolved so much from his original conception. So what are we looking at here for this custom? We are looking at a Storm Collectibles skeleton, or several skeletons really. We have the main skeleton here, and then there's also a Storm Collectibles dino skeleton, like reptile alligator dino skeleton from their Golden Axe series. And so I've pulled both skeletons together in order to make this guy. So these arms in the back here, the four arms in the back that are all sort of like in this, there we go, let's raise those up so you can see them. In this pose here, those are from the alligator figure. And then also this lower spine that you can see through the tentacles is also from the alligator figure. Then chest, arms, legs, and pelvis are from the normal skeleton. The hands have been replaced with the neomorph hands from Alien, I believe it's Alien Covenant. And then this head up here is a custom 3D printed head. Along with that, in order to fill up the torso, parts of the legs. I wanted to thicken the legs out, as well as thicken the arms out. I took sculpting putty. I used Procreate. It's a self-curing putty, which is really great. I took that and I just stretched it over all of like the open bone areas. And so, and then what I did was I took my rubber sculpting brush, I guess, rubber tipped sculpting brush. And because of that, it's not going to leave fingerprints behind. Its push is really, really gentle. And because it's rubber, it's not going to stick or grip onto anything. And so I actually used it to push the ribs back in. And so you can see here that it's not just stretched over and smooth, but you have all these nice divots inside. And so it's really like almost this emaciated, very skinny, sunken look for the chest there. As well, you can see the bones here have been filled in, but that's because I wrapped some sculpt around it. And then I also added some extra volume to the legs here, as well as you can see some little vein work and stuff. I hand rolled all these little veins and smoothed them out into the sides of the legs there. I also filled up some of the gaps that were in here for the crotch piece, but obviously because there's still some hollow bits, it's kind of hard to tell. But I did do a little bit of work there just to add some more mass to it, because when I realized that I started filling up the skin on the chest, I was like, holy cow, I need to even it out around the body. Otherwise it looks like the chest is now filled out and really thick, and then the rest of the body doesn't match. And so I had to add a little bit of extra filling over some of the body here. Coming around to the back, the way these Storm Collectibles skeletons work is that all the arms are connected to shoulder blades, and those shoulder blades are glued onto the rib cage. So I was able to cut and separate all the shoulder blades off the Storm Collectibles alligator reptile skeleton things, and then get some sculpting putty and fuse them on. On top of that, since I was using the neomorph already, I took the back spines from the neomorph here and I fused them into the back of the spine, because otherwise you had these giant hunkin' shoulder blades off the back and then it was just this hollow gap in the middle. And so by adding these spikes here, it helped fills up that space below. And then this last single spike here, I sculpted to help match the other ones. So you can see that these are a little bit more flexible. This one's a little bit harder. So we got these nice soft plastic spikes that have all been painted up. And then the reason why I switched the lower spine here was you have these lower floating ribs, but then normal human spine doesn't have like these extra bones on the side. And because of that, once again, by filling in the torso here, it made it feel like very, very full. And then all of a sudden it got super skinny. And so I chose to use the alligator spine there to help fill up some of that empty space. I guess the other thing I did was I 3D printed this head. I originally had a plan to release a bunch of Halloween themed heads for like a pre-order and stuff. And then I just realized that printing and cleaning and shipping with where I'm at right now is just not very realistic. So maybe I'll have to push that idea to next year, or maybe I'll just put them up for sale in December. I don't know. It's a very creepy Christmas Charlie Brown. Who knows? But so yeah, but I 3D printed this head, and this is my enlightened head sculpt. I did take inspiration from one artist that I follow on Instagram, and once again, their name escapes me, but I will tag them in the post so that you guys can see what he did, because he did sort of, he did a very normal skull. You know, this has this very sort of, you know, Cthulhu, cosmic horror-esque look to it. I was almost going to say Geiger, but not really Geiger. This is a little bit too organic for Geiger, but it's definitely got a lot more of this cosmic alien look to it. Whereas what the original artist did was it just looked like the top of the skull had been sort of like popped off, and then you had like, I think it was also a golden orb floating in it. But for mine here, as you can see, we filled up a lot of the space. We have these spikes coming off, a lot of details in there. And I should just pop this head off so that we can take a better look at it. So let me do that. And I'll put the body to the side for now so that we can get a very nice focused look on this guy. Oh, look at that lighting. It's so beautiful now. So as you can see, we have all these spikes coming off the top, and I did this very bronze yellow sort of aging skin look, and then you can see that up to the spikes, it fades into this gold, or transitions into this gold here. Around the mouth, I dropped in some really nice vibrant red, and so that you can see that this guy is still a little bit fleshy here, and then also painted the teeth really nicely. And then because I wanted this guy to be the enlightened mind, I painted the inside of like that head cavity black, and then I added some green, blue, purple, and then red gold color shifters, and so you get this really nebulous cosmic rainbow look inside the head. And I just want to spin this around so that you guys can hopefully get a good look at it. It's really, really pretty in person. And so then because I had all this sort of glowing stuff coming out of the skull, I painted a lot of the little cracks in the head with some of those color shifters as well. As you can see, it showing up in all these little pock marks throughout the head there, and even coming around to the back here. There's some more of those color shifters in there. So really, really cool. I had a great time modeling this head. I went through like probably 5 or 6 iterations of what the front of this looked like, because originally it was just all sort of like blank sort of flesh, like everything had just sort of smoothed over in the front, and that was giving it a very mysterious look. But then as I started, sculpting the body and getting more into the details, with my by hand work, I was realizing that the head felt too simple. So then I like extended the head, added some eye sockets and stuff like that. And then it felt too much like, where I took the inspiration for the golden orb out of the head. And so I realized that I needed to find some kind of middle ground here. And then as I was sort of refining my concept of this enlightened mind, I went, why does he need eyes? There's a lot of things that he doesn't need anymore. And when we go to the body, we'll sort of talk about that idea of like enlightenment and sort of leaving the goal is to sort of like cosmic horror spin of like leaving the body and not needing a physical body anymore. So, we have this, no longer needing the head, no longer needing the brain. This is sort of pulling away from the skull there. Obviously, the whole character is very emaciated. And so now bringing the body back, let's continue to talk about that a little bit more. So my original inspiration for going for a much more skeletal figure and skeletal tone was the movie Empty Man. If you haven't seen it, it's honestly a really mid movie. It's almost on the level of B movie in a lot of respects. The plot is kind of convoluted. It has a pretty cool plot twist and resolution, but honestly, don't feel like you need to go and watch it. The cool part though was the main antagonist, who is the Empty Man. And there's sort of like this effigy of him, and he has like a bunch of arms coming off the back, or like a bunch of weird stalks coming off the back, and he has these hands with like 10 or 20 fingers coming off of them. And so I looked at the neomorph and I was like, hey, the neomorph has 6 fingers per hand, and so I added those on. And then in replacement of these stalks or these extra growths off the back, since I'm going for more of this like enlightened leaving the body idea, I said, let's make some, more religious references, looking towards Hinduism and some more Eastern Asian type imagery there. And then obviously we have the head, very, very different from all the other sources that I'm pulling from. And so I said, I am going to go the direction of cosmic horror. And so originally, when we had these tentacles here, the idea was to have them almost like guts sort of floating outward, like his body was falling apart. And so that's why we have this, really rotted yellow, green, red skin look. Almost like what you see from a mummy, when you unearth it from like the sarcophagus. It's still very much a person, but so much of the flesh is gone, very dehydrated, tight, wrinkled skin, stuff like that. And so the idea was that he's almost like this mummy-esque figure, and you have all like his insides floating away, and his brain or soul or whatever this golden orb is also departing from the body. And then I realized that if I'm going the cosmic route, that's just too gory. And I didn't want that. I wanted this guy to be creepy, but also in a lot of ways pretty. It's art. I'm not trying to evoke, violent imagery in a sense. I'm trying to evoke something very mysterious. And so, as I was playing around with the concepts, I left the idea of the guts and the insides alone. I didn't like that. It didn't really feel like the type of design I was going for. I don't like gore for the sake of gore, and I didn't want to foster that in this guy. And so instead, what I went for is these really, really pretty space tentacles. And, once again, that idea of not needing the body anymore, but sort of ascending past that. And so you have these really nice purple, gold, green color shifters inside the tentacles. So you can see as we turn to the bottom side, a lot more stronger gold. And then you shift up, you're starting to see some of those greens. And then when you come to the top here, you're getting a lot more blues and purples from the top of the tentacles. And so I had several color shifter paints that I sort of gradually shifted and layered upwards, going from the gold all the way to the purple and the blue on the top. And then you can see there's a bunch of little speckled star details, and I actually hand painted those. Originally, I was thinking of flicking them on with a brush. That's essentially where you dab your brush in a lot of paint and then you just sort of flick the bristles. So you just get a little bit of splatter. But I realized that I didn't want to have to tape off or cover the whole body, so I didn't get any, extra paint anywhere. And so I just decided to get a really tiny brush and just hand dapple them myself. And then what you can see here is actually coming out of the crevice of the neck, there's another nice little tentacle there. And look how good these colors are coming through with the new setup. This is great, and I could never do this before. I'm really happy. But we have this other tentacle coming out through the sort of like the neck or from the collarbones there. And so the idea that it's sort of bursting out of him. And so you have all of these nice, glowy, pretty space tentacles, space arms coming out, as well as one that has made its way out and up this way. And the reason why I did out and up this way was it actually added it adds visual volume to the neck. It doesn't really do much. That it's not a large tentacle, but it helps fill up some of the space right around here. Because what I was realizing is you have like these really nice, long, thick legs. You have a lot of stuff going on with the arms here, and you have a lot of stuff visually filling up the space here. Once again, even if there's a lot of negative space, visually there's a lot going on here, and so it feels full. But you had this very thin neck coming up to this very, very busy head. And it felt like there was just this dead zone right in between this and this. And so adding that tentacle helps fill up the space and almost transition the eye coming up, and then you follow this tentacle up to the head. And so that helped the transition and making the guy feel full but not overly busy. Along with that, like I talked about vein work, you can see that there's a lot of extra little sculpted veins running across the top of this skeleton guy. I really liked those because it just added an extra level of detail. If it was just skin, it would look pretty boring, but having this sort of level of overgrowth or something else going on here, who knows what it is really, but you can see once again a couple other veins, some on the arms up here too. And so just to add a little bit more detail and a little bit more eye-catching interest to the design. Coming around to the back here, he does have this reptile tail. Why? Honestly, because I thought it was cool and it was a little more inhuman. I'm not sure if this guy is human. I'm not sure if this is some evolution of being enlightened. Maybe it's almost like how with Cthulhu, Yog-Sothoth, some of those more... what's his name? I'm forgetting the author's name now. Remind me in the comments, because I'm forgetting off the top. I can only think of Geiger right now for some reason. It's not H.G. Wells either. I don't remember his name. I'm sure you guys know. But anyways, the author of the Cthulhu mythos, sort of that whole idea of going mad when you see some of these, outer or elder gods. Something like that with this guy. Maybe it is just sort of this next step of evolution within the madness. Maybe it takes some sort of physical toll to be in their presence. And so you get this guy coming out of it. Along with that, the hands were also feeling a little bit empty. And so I ended up wrapping it with these black strips here. I cut this off an old Mezco cape, and I actually think it's a knockoff Mezco cape because the material is a little bit thinner than what I feel like I'm used to with Mezcos. But I cut it and I wrapped it around the hands and then super glued it on the inside, and also used some fabric glue to help it stay in place. And so he's got some tattered wraps around his hands. Originally I was thinking about giving him more wraps, but I eventually landed on this really, really nice look of sort of just having it on the hands there to fill up the hand space. And I feel like it fills up, sort of like these larger gaps visually, having stuff over here versus just empty, versus just like an empty block of space. Like that looks so much better than that. So that was my thinking there. So while this guy is super cool and super, super fun, he did come with a lot of his own challenges. Part of that was sculpting these. How do you make something float? As I was sculpting these tentacles, I kept on having to just push them up so that they would harden in place. That's the nice part about having a self-curing epoxy, is that it will harden on its own, but to get all of these floating, all in their own individual poses, I had to start from the top. I had to sculpt this first one, and then I kept on having to push it up, and then I would sculpt more. And so it was sort of like, continually sort of grabbing around them and just pushing all their edges up and sort of shaping them as they hardened. I had to use a very similar technique when I was working on the Azrael Batman from maybe about half a year or a year ago now. He had this like feathery collar piece, and I had to do the same thing in order to get the motion of those like feathers or tatters along the collar there. So very similar thing. It just takes some dedication. I think I probably spent an hour and a half or 2 hours sitting here. So because I would sculpt a tentacle, place it in, shape it, and then I'd have to push all the other ones up and adjust their shapes to stay the same. Put another one in, adjust their shapes, put another one in, adjust their shapes. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have 10, I think 10 here on the chest, and then an 11th coming out of the neck there. The other issue that this guy has is he's very, very top heavy. There's not much going on in the legs and the waist, but he's got all this sculpting here. Obviously, all the sculpting to fill in all the gaps in the chest, back, and arms. And then he's got these huge arms coming off the back. And so with these small little skeleton feet, he doesn't really like standing very well. It's very, very tough to pose him. Very tough to keep him straight, and that's why I have this clear stand back here, because it allows him to just sort of lean up against it. So then I can lean him up against it and pose him up and make him look all cool and intimidating without him falling backwards. That's just an unfortunate product of the design, and there's not really much I can do about it. And then the other thing, if you haven't noticed, is this guy, because he's from Storm Collectibles, and really the only way to properly design skeletons is to do everything either on ball joints or on like these ball hinge joints. And so in this case, the entire guy is done on ball hinge joints. And the issue when you're working with something this small is that if I sand around the inside of the bone, there's not enough tension and pressure in order to move the joint well without snapping the peg. So you need to have this sort of encasing on the sides in order for you to get a little bit more torque on the joint without snapping anything. But so there's not really a way to like solve it through sanding or paint rub. And so unfortunately, you can see you're getting some white poking out of the joints there. I haven't really moved the legs much, so you don't see it on the legs, but you can see it especially on the arms here. And there's a couple other places, I think. Most of them are covered up pretty well, but you can see a little bit of it. So that's just an unfortunate part of the design, and just sort of using these parts for the figure. But honestly, to create something this thin, I don't know. I can't think of any other better way to do it. So it's just how it is. But I think overall it looks very, very nice. I'm really, really happy with this guy, and I think I accomplished the vision pretty well. This very creepy, ethereal type character. Along with that, I'm sure you've noticed it, but I did hand paint a bunch of these little runes here, so you can see they're all across the collarbone, down the chest here, and they're all done sort of in that same vibrant red that's inside the cheeks and sort of splattered around the body here and there. And then he also has them coming down like the thigh bones. None of these mean anything. I was thinking about making them mean something, and I realized that it would be too hard to either do Nordic runes or kanji or anything else. It would just be too complicated to try to translate something, make sure it fit the size of the figure, make sure everything fit properly and looked symmetrical. And so instead, I decided to make up a bunch of nonsense and paint that in instead. But if it's an Elder God language that's maybe been, tattooed or shown up on this guy somehow, wouldn't be surprising that it would look like gibberish to us. So I think that all pays off very well. I'm really, really happy with this guy. It was a super fun challenge to take on because I had to transform this very, very kind of standard skeleton into something that was much, much more. And just that journey of creating the head sculpt, imprinting it and sizing it, and then figuring out the different parts and the configuration and then what to sculpt in order to get that really nice emaciated look along the rib cage or along the legs, as well as then taking on the challenge of sculpting all these tentacles and getting a good amount of motion coming out of them. All of it just felt like a really fun technical challenge. This guy isn't something I would normally do on my page or on my channel, but for the sake of the challenge, I decided to try this out and see if I could accomplish what I saw in my head. I think it turned out pretty well overall. I'm really happy with him. The joints aren't anything that I'm a huge fan of, but that just, once again, comes with the nature and the engineering of a figure that's, has this little mass on him, something that's skinny. You have to use those types of joints all over. So that's just the way that is. But I realized that I've been referencing this guy, as the Storm Collectibles skeleton. So how does he scale up to your other standard figures? So right here, we have the new Marvel Legends Black Panther on the new Buck. So we'll scoot both of these guys back. So as you can see here, we'll just put him directly in front. He is probably about like half an inch shorter from like the top spine maybe. Obviously to the top of the hands is a lot different, but that's not sort of main body. So the shoulder is a little bit lower than the ears are here. So you guys can get a good idea of scale there. And then for some extra scale, I'll bring in the Marvel Legends Venom, because this is one of my favorite figures of recent date. And you can see that Venom is a little bit taller than my little Ishmael character back here, but not by a long shot, and they're actually about the same height between the golden orb and the head here. So hopefully those are some good ideas for scale. These skeletons are a bit taller than your standard Marvel Legends, but they're not too incredibly large, and so he does scale on the shelf quite nicely. I don't know what I'm going to do with this guy post-Halloween. I'm thinking maybe I'll sell him or I'll put him up for like a bid on eBay or something. I really have no need for this guy other than the fact that it was fun to do. So maybe I'll organize some kind of giveaway or some kind of sale. We'll see, because honestly, I have no intentions on keeping him. If there's someone who wants this guy, I'd rather give it to someone who can put this up on their shelf, because I don't really have a display piece for this guy. Anyways, with all that being said, thank you for watching this video. Please go on Instagram. I will put a link to my page, as well as I'll try to put a link to the hashtag specifically of this challenge so that you can see all the other artists' figures that they've created over the last month. There's been some people who have done multiple Halloween themed figures, whether that be DC Halloween themed, different horror, classic horror characters. There's just a ton of creativity out of this challenge, and so please go check out and show some love to the other artists who have put a lot of time into this. On top of that, I just crossed 1,500 subscribers. Hopefully my channel hasn't dropped below that, and then I don't look like I'm lying, but I believe I've crossed 1,500 subscribers on YouTube. Thank you all so much. This has been an incredible journey so far, and thank you for dealing with like 2 or 3 years of my super trash light box. We finally have a new one to move forward with. But yeah, a huge milestone there. Maybe this guy will be the 1500 giveaway. Who knows? But yeah, I appreciate every single one of you guys. It's so cool that, it's not like I make revenue off a YouTube channel, but it's cool that I can have a YouTube channel and just, share my thought process as I've been creating these guys with you. And so I'm glad that there's a lot of people who appreciate the channel and that there's, 1,500 of you guys who care about what I'm doing. And that's really incredible. So thank you all so much. I appreciate every single one of you. Once again, please go check out the other creators who have and artists who have worked on this Halloween challenge. I will put a link to the hashtag. And with that, I don't think I have anything else to say. So I will catch you all next time. Take care.